I think it was when I realized I sucked at sales. I think it's that kind of humble mentality that makes a good RevOps person, because then you grow an empathetic layer of understanding selling is hard, right? And it's made harder if there isn't good data, if the systems are driving friction, and just everywhere you turn, you're dealing with things beyond just trying to convince a company and a prospect to separate budget from whatnot. So learning pretty quickly that selling wasn't for me, but the area around selling was incredibly interesting, was that pivotal moment.
You're listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience, a podcast dedicated to helping executives train their sales and marketing teams to optimize growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's accelerate your growth in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. I'm your host, Cory, and today I have with me Navin Persaud. He's a sales and marketing ops expert with more than 2 decades of experience helping companies scale smarter and faster. He currently serves as the VP of RevOps at 1Password, the leading password management and credential security platform. At 1Password, he leads a team of 30-plus RevOps professionals supporting a go-to-market organization of more than 450. His focus? Simplifying systems, processes, and data to help teams acquire and grow customers more efficiently. In addition to his work at 1Password, Navin held senior roles in RevOps at several high-growth SaaS and tech companies, including Fix Software, Ceridian, Revision Critical. Navin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cory. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. I love RevOps, of talking about it, learning about it, and I think it's a critical function. Just kind of back up and help our listeners get to know you first, though. Let's talk about your journey. Obviously, you've shaped operations and functions at notable companies over the years. What was a pivotal moment or experience that first drew you to the RevOps world?
I think it was when I realized I sucked at sales. I think it's that kind of humble mentality that makes a good RevOps person, because then you grow an empathetic layer of understanding selling is hard, right? And it's made harder if there isn't good data, if the systems are, driving friction, and just everywhere you turn, you're dealing with things beyond just trying to convince, a company and a prospect to separate, budget from whatnot. So learning pretty quickly that selling wasn't for me, but the area around selling was incredibly interesting, was that pivotal moment.
That's intriguing to hear. And I wonder, I mean, maybe not these days, but maybe early on in your career, did you ever feel a little bit of a tension between, you said like, okay, I'm not good at sales, but I'm highly interested in it, so I'm going to, do something that's adjacent and help. Did you ever get kind of pushback from the sales side of like, well, you don't know what you're doing because you're not in the trenches, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say in companies I've joined, apprehension, who you are and why you're here and what are you going to do, is rampant with sales leaders. And that's important that you are there to develop that layer of trust, so that you're viewed initially as judge and jury, or someone who will put them in a less than positive light, when in reality, your mindset and your approach to them should be, you're here to help. You're here to find blind spots for them. You're here to, take down friction. You're here to advocate for them. But all of those things means you're still here to tell the truth. Right. And I think you're there as a sort of a beacon for the business, but you're there to be in the trenches with your selling counterparts.
I like that mix between being in the trenches and being a beacon for moving forward and kind of a North Star. Were there any experiences you had early on in your career that shaped that as sort of a RevOps philosophy for you?
Yeah, I think working at a company like IBM, you see the politicking, you see it, right? And you understand, when you're in a room and there are people who provide insight in the data, and then there's that line of separation between the people out there actually trying to do the thing, they don't always get along. And I always wonder, like, there's got to be a place in a world where they're working together, working as opposed to working against each other. That's really one of the reasons why I enjoyed leaving, the larger companies and sort of moving into smaller SaaS.
That makes sense. It's a little bit easier to turn the ship for sure when it's not 3 miles long. I want to talk about AI a little bit, because obviously that's pervasive these days, definitely in RevOps. There are a lot of gains to be had. And I love how you described it. I was listening to another one of your recent podcasts, and I think you said something along the lines of simultaneously the scariest and most freeing tech in ops today. Could you unpack that a little bit for us? Like, what's involved in that duality, and how do you understand that dichotomy between the two?
Yeah, I mean, AI is dominating almost every conversation, if not already fueling it. Companies, people, they worry about, what that means for change in their careers and everything else. Within like SaaS and sales, I view it as a pretty amazing thing. If it's almost like that saying in the Spider-Man movies, right? Like with great power comes great responsibility. So the power of AI is there. The responsibility is up to you and your teams to understand where are you going to deploy it, how are you going to deploy it, and do you have like foundational layers in your business to make sure that you have the right accuracy and the right level of trust in what the AI is providing into your business.
Makes sense to me. And Nevin, I think you're an ideal person to ask about this because you've gone from IBM and had a look kind of behind the curtain of what's going on there. And then obviously some smaller SaaS companies, and then up to 1Password, which I would consider probably a mid-size. Is that right? And I was struck by a stat that Gartner released the other day, which was that 1 in 10 CEOs think their CSO is AI savvy. And yet the flip side of the coin was that you've got 1 in 4 CSOs that are responsible for integrating AI into the revenue engines right now. So that's a big disconnect, right, between what they're tasked with and their perceived level of competency. So where do you think that disconnect comes from when you have, from your experience, like a large company looking to integrate and adopt AI versus maybe a smaller startup that's a little bit more comfortable with tech and how all that goes?
I think a lot of it is reputation based. Like if you're a large company and you don't already have an AI strategy in how you go to market and within your rev tech, kind of looks bad on you. So who's going to say they aren't? But I think if you're a smaller company, you can easily basically say, hey, we're adopting it. We're taking, those smaller strides and we're going to grow. We're going to build a foundation and grow from it. So I think people understand how to play both sides of that coin. It's no different to me than, way back when you had the Y2K problem is coming. Oh, data is the new gold. Like this is that next thing. And everyone wants to make sure they're on the right side of that headline.
Yeah, I agree. And yet at the same time, it feels like everyone wants to say they're on the right side of that. But then internally, when you see behind the scenes, it does feel like, at least from InfoSec, IT, right? There's a lot of caution there too, and maybe a little bit of apprehension again. So in your experience, how can leaders kind of balance that rightful caution, which with not becoming a laggard and really sort of adopting things when they make sense?
Definitely have to start small, right? So baby steps. Think about the areas which, are continuous in your business, but drive either a lot of manual cycles or just hold your teams back, your RevOps teams back from delivering in other areas. Those are ripe for disruption with AI that allow you to then grab more insight of your business at scale. Because to me, like the data, that's great. The systems, that's nice. But all those things to me are a means to an end. And that end is, what can I do about the business to grow it faster? What can I learn about what's happening so that in the time horizon I have to operate, what change can I make and have it realized? So I get it, systems and data give you those things, but what can you plug in to learn more quickly at scale? And that's one of the biggest things I see out of AI is that understanding of like, hey, give me the 411 of what's happening in an area of my business. Let me then go validate it and then go take some action on it.
Yep. Are there certain areas of the business where that data is maybe easier to come by or more actionable in your experience?
Well, an area that I see as ripe for disruption is around enrichment. There's so much in the marketplace around vendors that provide, hey, you need an ICP, hey, you need a customer profile, you need a persona, you need to really understand your firmographics, your technographics, and everything else in between. And there's a lot of vendors who that's their job and that's their space they operate. They could be ripe for disruption, right? Either get on board or fall off the train. For me, it's an area where it's super important because as a business, we want to understand where we're winning and where we're losing and why. And the more that we can understand that at scale, the more that we can drive efficiency and we can drive growth. And those are one of the best ways to do it is to the more likely we are to point our sellers in the right direction to find more lookalikes for where we're winning. And then the more we can go, tell our product or here are the reasons why we're losing that might fall into your camp. Maybe that can help fuel a roadmap and you can grow. And marketing, here's a narrative that you can leverage as according to that. So to me, this is all like immense areas of growth where a lot of companies don't realize that they're sitting on a gold mine of data, unstructured or otherwise, failing to capture otherwise, that if they do well and do right, can, illuminate it for them.
That's an excellent point. And I really like the standpoint. I feel like where you're coming from an operations perspective of gathering the data, interpreting the data, and then it seems to really be about aligning the go-to-market motions, like product, hey, here's what you could learn from this, or marketing, here's some narratives that you could latch into and provide a little bit of air cover for. I think I've seen that myself as a really successful approach. And if we're thinking about particularly enrichment, right, and the value that that can bring to a RevOps and an organization, looking maybe 12 months out into the future, how do you see that evolving and how should teams work to really be poised to capitalize on it?
I think when people hear the word enrichment, they do think about what I said previously, which is firmographics, segments, industry, things of that nature. Well, what about deal enrichment? What about understanding all of the things that maybe your sellers are forgetting to put in their CRM? What about understanding at a better level of why you're losing? What about taking a tried and trusted sales methodology and aligning your conversations so that you can capture answers to those reasons, and then you can use that data to then win or learn. There's only a lose, or you only take that L if you're not learning. So that's the big one for me. And I think, deal enrichment is huge. It's a huge gold mine of opportunity. See vendors pushing it all the time. And I'm drinking some of the Kool-Aid here personally, because I think we're opening our eyes to a better understanding of, what's happening. And at the same time, freeing our reps up to spend less time on the admin side and more time on the selling side.
Yeah, I mean, that alone is huge, right? We've been saying it for years. Sellers have been saying that they hate it for years and with good reason, right? If we want them to actually do this, right, have conversations, we need to pick up the slack elsewhere. Yeah, couldn't agree more. So maybe looking at the flip side of the coin, and maybe if I'm one of those more cautious or apprehensive rev leaders out there, what are the areas where the hype maybe doesn't live up right now when you're integrating AI, where there's maybe more of a challenge to get it right?
One of the big areas for me and area of focus is around forecasting. It's hard. It's really hard because there's so many variables and dependencies. AI is not there yet, right? There's not a clear and clean enough data set that I think companies are providing at scale where they can say, well, AI will improve your forecast. No, not really. AI will help you understand maybe why you're not getting to your number or what points of friction live in your product, your sales process, and within your teams. It's not going to deliver a forecast for you. So that is still a little far out for me. It's still very much math and still very much like art science, right? I don't think right now, at least in the near term, especially in a business like ours where there's complex routes to markets, different ways to buy, it is a massive company level kind of project to solve. And I just have RevOps. So that's a non-starter for me.
Yeah, I could see where that happens. And what do you think? We all know the old school way of looking at forecasting, right? Where it's like either you have a simple checklist, right? Like binary, like yes or no. And if you get 4 yeses, okay, cool. We can forecast this opportunity. And then we have on the other side of things like, oh, I've got a really good feeling about this one. And what else? Oh no, that's it. I've just got a really solid feeling about this one. So I'd love to get your perspective. Where does the art come into that still? And where is that valuable in your opinion?
So you need to do a little bit of both, but you need to provide the right level of guidance. And then again, here's where I am leveraging AI to understand like the fill in the gap moments, right? So that we can, set up the prompts. We use a platform internally that, listens to the call conversations and then through the pre-prompts that are loaded, helps us answer the sales qualification questions so that, we get the reps view of it. And then we get like that black and white AI level view of it. And that like qualitative versus the quantitative helps us really understand like how much do we trust what we're hearing, and how much do we actually trust what's happening and what's happening next. And those layers give us a little bit more confidence into like where to call a deal. And even if we don't win those deals, like we learn so much along the way in terms of where we need to get better, the coaching, where the product, the marketing, our assets, our pitch decks, our pricing, we learn a lot. So AI is filling in a lot of gaps and exposing a lot more information we can use to improve the business.
That's a good mix. That's a great way to do it. And I mean, you mentioned tools a few times, and you mentioned you're kind of drinking the Kool-Aid as far as some of these enrichment strategies and tools go. You seem pretty close to the technical aspect of it. I'm curious, what's your take on AI native platforms versus, those more like bolt-on AI features that we're seeing a lot of tech companies come out with now?
Yeah. So back to the earlier point, like you asked about, like, are you using AI in your company? Well, a lot of companies have a lot of legacy tech, and a lot of those legacy players are now quickly trying to like, hey, how can we layer AI into our story and what we do? But then you have this, a plethora of companies that are coming out who are built on an AI first model. And I find that the latter and the newer companies, the smaller ones, can be a bit more nimble because this industry is still changing so rapidly. Like the models and the data points and the LMs, everything is just like happening now. And they're in the midst of it, right? They have flexibility in their platform. They're not locked into decisions they made years ago that makes everything run. So they can move a lot more quickly. And I find that if you find the right partner there, they can pretty quickly sort of align to the way you need to run your business. Whereas some of those older ones, they're just like, hey, this is the feature we have right now, take it or leave it. This is all we can provide. Everything else is in a future roadmap. Maybe they get there, maybe they don't. But what I've learned is growth is time bound, and every day needs to be a day of success, and you need to maximize that with both your selling teams and with your vendor partners.
Yep. And going back to the early example of, maybe a larger company or maybe a company that's used one of these legacy solutions for the last 10, 15 years, right? Change is scary for everyone. What would you say to leaders that are, maybe want to go outside the box, maybe want to investigate some of these tools that are new, that are AI native platforms, but they have some legacy tech and everyone's kind of comfortable with it? Where should they start investigating, and how should they try to move people in that direction?
My mindset has always been, what is the problem you're trying to solve before you even think of a tool, let alone one with AI or AI based. Start from that lens, like nail down the problem. The tool or what you choose then can be the facilitation of how to solve it, but you need to be really clear and wide-eyed around that. I see, and I've been to organizations who just bought tools left and right, and then I inherited someone's mess to, kind of fix up and clean up. So really align on the problem. And is it a problem that you can solve with what you have, or is that you need to go to market? And then, get in a POC, right? If you've nailed down a few vendors, you know what your problem is, have them prove it for you, right? I know there are a lot of companies that, don't offer it, but the companies who do are willing to like, hey, I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. And those are the ones that, are going to put in the effort to make that POC successful and give you the confidence that you can learn from that tech and that they're flexible to work with you.
I think it's excellent advice. And another kind of future-based question for you: how do you see that landscape evolving? Do you see those platform categories kind of collapsing? Do you see a lot of consolidation coming over the next couple of years? Where's your head on that?
Well, there's been a convergence of tooling even before AI became like the headline. There's companies that I use in my stack that, you know, they do sales engagement, they do conversational recording, they do forecasting. They kind of do all three. Like what they started in one area and then they're encroaching on other people's backyards. So that was happening even well before AI. Now that AI is in the game, I only think that'll accelerate. I think companies will quickly try to discover other areas and leverage AI to encroach further and become that like single platform for RevTech, GTM tech.
Yeah, it's definitely happened in the last few years, right? Everyone wants to be the one piece of tech, right? To your point, sales engagement platforms started being conversational intelligence and back and forth. That's intriguing though. I've never heard that vision applied to AI. And now that you've said it, it's like some of the best advice, right? Once it is aired, I'm like, oh, that's completely self-evident, right? Of course, that's how it's going to happen. So yeah, I definitely agree. Okay. I want to shift gears a little bit away from the tech and go back to the human side of things. And there's one role in particular that I'm not very familiar with, and I wonder if many of our listeners are familiar with it, the GTM engineer. And that's a role that you've kind of historically championed. So first, maybe tell us a little bit more about that and why that's a role that you think is so crucial.
I first heard of this like early last year, and then it started popping up a lot more in my LinkedIn feeds. I saw job postings around it, dug in a little bit, and started to realize, yeah, no doubt, hand in hand with AI comes the person who can orchestrate it. So if you're that leader out there thinking, hey, I have a problem, and I need to buy some tech that leverages AI to solve it. Third leg of that stool is who's going to put it in place and run it at scale in your business. And that's this GTM engineer. That is someone who's going to look across your rev tech and assume that like they're the maestro and acquire, and your acquires that rev tech, integrate it, give you the right data, and then pull out the right signal from the noise to help you understand, how your business is running and where those insights are from. Too often, I think companies, invest in the tech and then leave them as standalone silos. And for AI to be, super powerful, it's got to be all knowing of your business anyways.
And I guess this is self-evident from the name, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. Would this role be just have carte blanche across the whole GTM function as far as tech stack goes? Is that the ideal way to implement it?
I think it depends on the structure of your org. Like I'm in an org today where the systems and the rev tech falls into the RevOps camp. I've seen it in other orgs where there's a dedicated BizOps or IT team that runs it. To me, I'm going to be partial here and say it's best to have it in a RevOps function. We, by nature, are closest to how the business needs to operate. We are living the day to day and the sales team's challenges, CS teams, etc. So it makes sense that we be close to providing the orchestration advice or where we have gaps or how we learn from it. The further you bring this role from the inner workings of go-to-market, either the harder it will be for them to drive value, or the further they are removed from that translation layer that RevOps seems to occupy.
Yep. I think that makes perfect sense. And going a little bit further up the ladder, I don't know how it's structured at 1Password, but if you have a company maybe that's just getting started with RevOps or looking at sort of shaking up the organization, where do you think RevOps ideally sits under?
That's a tough one too. I've always reported into the CRO, so head of sales or in the sales org. Again, we talked about it off the top where you have to develop trust. And then from that trust, you can then prove value. And I feel as though by putting RevOps in another camp, you immediately are working in the opposite way of trust. You've created a unnatural division, which then creates untrust or fear of different agendas. So putting it in the same camp, aligning on the narrative, but being impartial, being unemotional when it comes to the assessment of the business, super key. I think any strong CRO will absolutely appreciate that. They don't want to be surprised. They want to know how it's going because they're going to talk to those sales leaders and then they're going to talk to me. And I think they need to know that they're going to hear different viewpoints and understand, where the line in the middle needs to be.
Yep, I like that, aligning under the same roof, so to speak, same strategy, and also having that confidence and maybe set expectations as well of like, well, these are the type of things we're going to bring to you because you need to hear them. Going back, so stepping back down the ladder a little bit, back to that GTM engineer, I'm curious, what particular background are you looking for, or is it mindset, skills based when you're hiring for this role, or really looking to implement it right off the bat?
Mindset for sure, and this goes without being a GTM engineer. It's curiosity. For me, it's a superpower. It's the why, right? I don't accept the status quo. I'm always trying to learn, and I look for that in people when trying to hire, right? It's when you hear answers, RevOps will hear answers all the time. Your job is to go a few layers deep to understand. And then from that understanding, you can come out of those layers and understand, all right, here's how this should operate and here's how it should run. Here's what drives the best outcome. curiosity is critical to that. I think obviously you're going to need to know, especially in my world, how a SaaS org works, how a GTM function generally operates. And they're not all that different, right? There are maybe some nuances around the edges, but generally the functions in a SaaS sales org and from a go-to-market standpoint, pretty carbon copy from company to company. So you definitely need that skill set. But then you need to understand a bit of like the technical layer of the platforms, what they do, how data moves between them. You don't actually need to be the one doing the hard work on the integrations, but you need to understand the art of possible between systems so that you know what you can deliver at scale once you start plugging into them.
I'm struck that you led with curiosity because that's something that we often say makes for the best salespeople, right? They're deeply curious and want to look behind the scenes and actually see what the problems are and the pain in a business, right? And kind of help clients solve that. Continuing to awkwardly put on my sales hat here, I will say, help us quantify the cost of inaction for not implementing this role right now for a business, maybe a business, in the a small, mid-size, or even a large corporation that is lacking any role that has this functionality.
Lost ROI or investment. So you bought some AI platform and you have it as shelfware or you don't have it maximized to deliver the value you need in your business. You are going to be left behind by your competitors who may already be doing this and have the orchestration layer in place to develop, structured insight to make decision ready, use information for decision ready data. And I think 3, you might be putting your RevOps team at a disadvantage because you are then keeping them pinned to providing a lot of manual work and preventing them from escaping that to drive insight to, change the trajectory of your business.
Very fair. 3 extremely compelling reasons right there. Another thing that I wanted to touch on is your philosophy in balancing the AI tech and the automation and the enrichment with the human judgment side of things. So I'll start very generally. What have you seen the impact of AI integration into teams and their strategic thinking? How has that affected that so far?
I think it's key to not think of AI, at least in the iteration that we have available to us today, as a crutch, right? Like there's still a human behind the decisions we need to make. And I think the folks who are able to leverage AI to more clearly communicate the message, like a lot of like to me here, I joke, but I say slides are the currency of communication in my business. They absolutely are, right? If at this level, you need to be able to get your point across rather crisply. It needs to be backed up by data, and you need to have a recommendation. If you don't have those 3 things, no one's going to listen to you, let alone do anything you say. And I feel like AI can help a lot in those areas. It can sharpen how you come across. It can sharpen the message you're trying to bring forward, and it can bring lots of clarity to like the proposed set of actions. But it's still all going to need to come from your brain. It's still all going to need to come from what you know about the business, because AI doesn't know your business. It knows the business. It knows a SaaS business. It knows a security-based business. It knows RevOps, but it needs to learn the nuances. And every SaaS business I've been in, every RevOps function I've had has attracted me there because it was painful and I got an opportunity to build. But then each one was nuanced different, right? The way they reported, the way that the business was run, their motions to market, the way in which they grew, et cetera. All those are nuanced, and no AI is going to have that information.
I think that's extremely well said. I love the idea of not relying on it as a crutch, and at the same time, it's not the genesis. I feel like I've seen that as an intriguing distinction. A lot of teams, or some teams I've spoken to, even to the point of asking someone who's got 15 years of experience in what they're doing, right? A question that should be related to thought leadership. They're like, "Oh, I'll ask ChatGPT." You're like, "Wait, what?" That's intriguing. That's the go-to. And then the other side of that, you've got it where it's like, okay, we're using it, here, and here, right? Here's what it's doing with our data. Here's what it's doing, like you said, to make this clear, to summarize some information, to give me the proof points I need to get my message across. So it's an intriguing mix out there right now for sure. I'm curious, what What would you say is the ideal mix of human expertise and tech, specifically within the RevOps function today?
It might settle, but are you referring to like how much should we be running through RevOps as a function versus how much we should let like AI loose?
Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it. Yeah, let's start there.
Well, let's start by saying that if you're a SaaS company right now and you think you're not using AI, you probably are, and you just don't know it because your sellers, those emotional creatures who do well because they're emotional creatures, absolutely using AI off the shelf, paying it on their credit card because it's a leg up, right? It gives them that opportunity. And if they're not, they're probably not great sellers because they haven't figured that part out. So I completely accept that it's happening, and other companies should do as the same. For me, though, I'm still in the baby steps approach, right? I talk a good game, but I need to be, things need to be proven. And one of the vendors I'm using today, it is quite proven, and I'm continuing to see the art of possible. The scope of what they can provide and what they're providing today continues to grow, and that to me is like a positive investment because I'm getting return, I'm seeing value, and then I'm double downing every time I get that value.
I love your point about sellers. They're using it, whether you think they are or not, too, because it's one of the things that we continually reward. If you're stuck at middle management, like what good salesperson isn't just going to leapfrog and go around that person up to the power in the situation, the person that actually has the power to buy. And so that sort of creativity and that resourcefulness, it's like not only do we actively hire for that and reward that when it happens, but when it comes to AI, for some reason, we just pull the blinders down and say, oh, they're not doing that. But of course, to your point, they are. What would you say to a company that is maybe just waking up to that revelation right now and worried about security and all the other things that could come with that?
Think about 1Password. If you've got shadow IT hiding in your infrastructure, give us a ring. Happy to make the intro, but those are the things that we do, and it's what we do. AI, left unchecked, can be a little dangerous.
Yep.
And there are things that 1Password offers that can help you control it, find it, and make sure it's being used for the good of your business.
Fair enough. I will back that up. We are 1Password customers ourselves. I love the platform. I think it's fantastic. And like you said, shadow IT is always a risk. Okay. Moving back before we get to the end of the podcast, I want to get your take on how do you actually, we talked about the ideal structure, but how do you actually coach teams, and the people that are maybe a little bit nervous, like, is AI going to take my job, or is AI just going to make me a button pusher in an assembly line, just checking its work and then telling it to do another task? How do you really control that narrative and communicate with your teams about what tech you're going to use and why it's going to be beneficial for them?
You really have to think about your org and your structure and your opportunities to up level, right? And when people see that there's an opportunity to grow in their career by doing less but more in terms of like value that they're delivering to the business, and see that there's an opportunity where AI can like do the grunt and the harder things that are just, it's hard because there's just so much of it to do, then I think you can demonstrate a path where you can remove that anxiety that comes with AI. I think those are critical things. There are a lot of companies out here that I've seen that says, "Yay, we won't hire anymore unless you can prove AI can't do it." It's kind of harsh. I'm not sure that I'm there yet. I'm not sure the tech is balanced and well adopted. I think there's a lot of novel use cases. So I still think we're a little far away from that, let alone the adoption and the security hazards that company need to sort of account for as they adopt at scale. But right now, I would say we're in the midst of a revolution, right? There's change in how companies will choose to operate, and those who attract, invest the right talent, those who have an understanding of where AI can be capable, they're the ones who are going to improve their odds of success in like a landscape that is getting more and more competitive on the daily.
Yeah, but I couldn't agree more. I mean, personally, I'm on the side of things where it's like, yes, this is fantastic. Yes, let's lean into it. And at the same time, I think, call me old fashioned, I think people need jobs. I think jobs are generally good for people. And, if we can use it in a way that people add more value to the business, right? Not only like makes them feel good, that hits our productivity numbers we're always looking for, and it makes work more meaningful in a way as well. Okay. As we move toward the end of the podcast, there are two questions that we ask every guest. And so we're recording this in May of 2025. So looking ahead to 2030, what is one shift coming for RevOps that maybe not a lot of people are talking about right now?
Wow. I think, and I hope it is that companies are investing in RevOps sooner. I've done a few of these podcasts, and one of the things that I've seen and the horror stories I've seen is companies, they're starting up to get product market fit. They then start to grow pretty crazy. They hire a lot of salespeople. They invest in a lot of tech. They create a lot of noise. Then they realize that they're at this inflection point where forecasting is hard, sales incentive plans are difficult, territories are a mess, they have no real data. Where's the foundation of their business in their rev tech? Oh, we need RevOps. Let's just bring RevOps in now and figure it out. Too little, too late, because none of that stuff turns on a dime. You need to invest in RevOps sooner. And I hope that companies will see, especially now with AI and a thirst for data, that you have to build that foundation sooner, or you can forget about leveraging AI tools in the future because you won't have the integrations, you won't have the tech landscape, you won't have the data, you won't have any of the necessary components to make AI work in your business at scale.
That's fantastic advice. I think so many companies, they start on a rocky foundation, and like you said, they get caught up in growth and they prioritize growth at maybe more than they should to their detriment. And then once they do realize it's a problem, it's that they try to bolt on, and they'll throw tech at the problem too, right? But they still have sort of a leaky boat underneath it all, and it's hard to kind of recover from that. Okay. And Navin, our last question is, looking back at your own journey, if you could go back 5, 10, maybe even 15 years and give one piece of advice, career advice to your younger self, what would it be and why?
Oh, I wish I've gotten into software much sooner. I've been in software for just over 10 years, and I've been working for a lot longer than that. It has been like a second career to me. It has, elevated me in so many areas. It's given me an opportunity to learn. It is the business, and SaaS and tech has just blown up in the time that I've been in it. So it's been amazing. I wish I got started it sooner. I wish I had even more knowledge than I had today about, what does amazing look like and what does really bad look like? Because you don't learn from amazing as much as you learn from bad, in my opinion.
Yes, it's so true. Oh, well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. If people want to learn more about you, more about 1Password, where should they go?
Definitely hit me up on LinkedIn or click on the, view my website, take you right to 1Password to learn more about, what we do. We're a Canadian company. We have a great brand, and our job is to protect people, whether at work or at home.
Fair enough. Well, thanks again for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Cory. Have a great one.
You've been listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.